most business owners tell me there are three things that they want. They want more time, they want better finances, and they want more freedom. Like those are the three things that come down to like business owners in general. And, what does that mean? It means, well, they want more time to do the things that they want to do. And that's why they started a business to begin with.
Yeah.
But they get into what I call the workaholic trap if they're not careful. They justify long hours. They justify the hustle. They justify all of this until they become burnt out. And then they go, oh man, I'm kind of stuck now. And either they justify it further and it becomes a problem for their relationship. They divorce, they lose, relationship with kids. I've seen it. I've seen guys about to retire and they don't have any relationship with their kids anymore because they just worked. So having a dad, while he only lived 49, almost 50 years on this earth, who, in my opinion, had accomplished and become the person that I think he was supposed to be in that short amount of time, that really made me go, I'm 25, I'm half his age, 26 almost. What do I need to be doing? How can I make these big changes? And I think part of what I do now to coach business owners is to have that same kind of aha without having to go through that trauma. But really imagine, what does life look like at the end? And what if that's in 5 years, 10 years, tomorrow? Like, I'm not trying to create FOMO. I'm not trying to create fear-based motivation, but none of us really know. But if we can look from the back and look back on life and say, this is where I wanted to end up, well, then let's just start taking tiny little chunks of time and work on the things that we need to work on so that we can get there.
Dr. Travis Parry, welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur Podcast.
Thanks, Paul, for having me.
I'm delighted you came on. You lost your father suddenly at a very young age. You were 26 years of age. And it seems to me that obviously it was an extraordinarily difficult moment for you, but it also seems that that moment really pivoted your life and has really, from the experiences there, has created the life that you now live. So could you take us back to that experience and
Sure.
the choices you made from there on in and the work you do now?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was such a pivotal time. And, I speak openly about this experience because, I had a friend who he found out his father was dying of cancer. And, they had all this time to record messages and videos for their grandkids and write a family history on his life or a life history on his life for his family and, get financial things in order and talk to attorneys and all the things.
Yeah.
And then one day I got a phone call from every one of my family members at the exact same time. I was coming home from work. I was talking to somebody about a business deal. And anyway, it just actually happened to be something that my dad and I were working on together. So it was kind of weird that it happened like that. But I looked at my phone. I'm like, oh man, everybody in my family called me. That doesn't happen. And then my wife was calling through. I'm like, I have to answer this. And then she gets on the phone and says, your dad had a heart attack on his mountain bike ride and they're sending him to the hospital. And I thought, he's going to be fine. My dad's like, he's a beast, man. That guy rode hundreds of miles a week. He's as healthy as an ox. He's going to be just fine. And then I'm like, oh, what if he's not? That was a weird thought. And I jumped in the car and I said, I need to go home. And I just left the business meeting. I'm like, I don't really care. I got to go. Jumped in the car, drove home. And on the way home, I just had this sinking feeling that he died. And I could barely see the road. You shouldn't cry when you're on the highway. You need to be able to see. But it was just overwhelming. And when I got home, I hugged my wife. My two little kids run around confused. And then I got a hold finally of somebody at home I was a couple of states away. I was in Utah. They were in California. By the time I got a hold of anybody, it was chaos at the hospital. And my brother basically just said, the doctor came out and said they did everything they could for him and he's gone.
Wow.
It was one of these like nightmare movie moments, right? where the people are in the waiting room, the doctor comes out, like, we've done everything, and they just like fall on the floor. Half, like, the community was there, his family was there. He was life flighted from a mountain bike ride, where, his one of his best friends was an EMT, and he worked on him for a long time before the helicopter even got there. And anyway, just all these details. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, I never expected my father to die at age 49. He was a month away from his 50th birthday. And I was 25, turning 26 that year. And so I was half his age ish, right? Um, and as a financial advisor and as the oldest son, all these responsibilities started to fall on my shoulders. I had to help my mom plan the funeral. I wrote the obituary. We bought the plot from the cemetery. We picked out the casket together, made all the arrangements, flying people in. And then I had to call the life insurance company. And as the financial advisor, I was dealing with all the back end stuff like, hey, where the life insurance proceeds are going to go. And we got to pay, mom's house off and get her situated. And oh, I grew up. I probably aged 10 years in that, a year that after dad died. So how did it affect me? It affected me for the rest of my life because I had so many experiences during that short amount of time that really redirected me for good, actually, for good. I had a health journey that my wife and I are still on. um, I changed what I'm doing for a living because of these experiences. I wanted to help people in a different way. And spiritually, I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe that God wants me to become something better. And when I wrote my father's obituary, most people don't have this, opportunity. If they ever do, it's later in life. I was 25, and I'm sitting here trying to write my dad's story. And it was right after Christmas, and, all these emotions. It took me forever, and I'm not the greatest writer in the world. So it was really tough to write this about a father who I loved and still love and appreciate, and it was such a great, amazing person. And so what I did after all this dust kind of settled is I pulled out my journal, and I was like, you know what? My dad, standing room only, thousands of people came to his funeral. Just the incredible outpouring from the community was life changing. And I thought, gee, what do I need to be doing? What kind of person do I need to become to make that kind of an impact on the world, or at least on my family, right? What kind of person do I need to be? And I started making some major, major changes. And that led me to opening up my business practice from financial advisor to what I call a life planner, a legacy life planner, a legacy family planner, whatever you want to call this, but kind of incorporating all areas of life
Mm.
and the health, relationships, spirituality, not just finances, not just money and investments and insurance, but how that money affects all aspects and areas of life. So God really pushed me down this road to coach and mentor and plan with people for their future and how they can plan to, leave a legacy for their children.
As I'm listening to you speak, I'm hearing that at that point in time, as a very young man, and I mean, I remember being 25 years of age. I was recently married, and you see yourself, you're a man, you're married, all you have a career, and now looking back, you realize you're still just a child, and in that moment,
100%.
yeah. And by the way, I'm sure in 20 years' time, I'll look back and I think I was a child. I think you you have to deal with two enormous things. I imagine I was going to say in that first year, but you're always dealing with those two things: the grief of losing a father who you were obviously very close to, loved, because I can hear the respect in your voice as you're talking about him. I can hear the connection. So you lose a father that you thought you were going to have for the next 30 years,
At
maybe.
least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you so you're dealing with the grief and the grief of your mother and your siblings, but simultaneously, alongside this horrendous grief and trauma, you have the reality that, particularly for your mother, I suppose, and it's maybe not a financial reality for you, but the reality for your mother is now she is a widow. she has to take care of her home and her finances or everything. So, um, did you obviously dealt, based on where you've evolved to with the financial side of that and learned a lot of that. Did you deal with the grief side of that? Did you find that I'm gonna have to park the emotion here so I can deal with the practical, or were you able to handle both at the same time?
It's just a really great question. So I felt that I could add value to the situation. And because of that, because of my, specialty with financial planning and helping mom and being close to her and being the oldest son, it was like I was the financial advisor, accountant, banker, and executor of the estate all at
Yeah.
once. And at first, that responsibility is like, well, I'm going to step into it because that's noble and that's what I need to do and that's what dad would want me to do, and I can put my energy toward this. But I think what it what it ultimately did was kind of held that grief from really hitting me as hard as it probably would have if I didn't have that opportunity. So I think it just kind of pushed it back a little bit. Like I was grieving, but
Of
I was
course.
so busy. I was so busy, we're doing all these things that it kept my mind to have a purpose. I think a lot of people, when they grieve, they're like, well, what do I do? Like, what do I do now? What's my purpose? What's my direction? And I hear this from a lot of widows. It's like, well, I don't know what to do now.
Mm.
What do I do with the business? What do I do with the home? What do I do with our family? Because we never had, expected this to happen. Of course not. Nobody expects this.
Mm.
Um, my dad was somewhat prepared, but it wasn't like, if you're 75 and you got every duck in order, as you know, the end is
Yeah.
coming sometime soon.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that at all. It was like, okay, he had some things and we were just kind of trying to figure out what to do. Um, so in some ways, it pushed back the grief, but it also gave me a way to grieve in that it gave me a purpose. I think later, grief isn't just like a one-time thing. Quite honestly, there are times where I just look at my dad's picture and I just I just cry like a baby and I
Mm.
sob for a little bit. And it's 20 years. It's
Yeah.
20 years ago. But I still know him as he is, and I believe I will see him again. And so my belief system allows me to handle that. I turn my grief to God, and a lot of times I'm able to say, "Here, take this," because I'm done. I'm done trying to do this on my own. But I think also it gave me space. Like those 2 years after dad died was like a blur to me. It gave me space to think about what I want to do in life and how I want to correct things that I wasn't doing so well at, and quite honestly, still working on.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey, but it's given me such motivation and such a point to say, man, here I am. Now that was 20 years ago, and I am doing a lot better, I think, in most areas. But I've taken that as a motivation to say, how can I help other dads who are stressed out, times just swapped, um, and maybe their relationships are really lagging. They don't have the relationship with God they want. Like all of these things that they are struggling with. How can I help them? Because I don't have the power to bring dad back to life. That's God's area.
Mm.
My area though is I can help other dads. I can help other business owners who are stressed out, dealing with all the same things that my dad dealt with. And with the knowledge, experience, and motivation that I have, I can go head on and help them to have better lives.
It's interesting what you say. I interviewed a guest some time back, Dr. Colin Noctor, and we were talking about anxiety among parents and children. And he said one of the best things you can do when you're in a very stressed situation is go and find somebody else you can help out. I mean, go and
Yep.
serve. So whether it be in your community, family, or whatever. And I suppose often in a challenging time, whether it's grief or whether it's a business difficulty or whatever it is, we become so absorbed in in what's going on for us that
Yeah.
we stop looking outside. We stop looking to how we can help. And you were forced into a situation where how can I serve? But also the other thing I'm noticing is that I'm listening to is that you described as a very noble thing, and I can imagine standing in the church and looking at all of these people who came to honor your father. And as a 26-year-old man, there's a real shift in understanding there because I think for many of us at that age, it's my career, my business. I'm start a family. It's about what can I gain, what can I grow, and then you realize that to stand there at your funeral and see all these people who love, cared, and respect you, like that is just hard to beat. And it's nothing to do with the business you built or with the dollars in your bank account. It's how you were as a human being. And to learn that lesson at 26 years of age, I think it's obviously a powerful impact on you, but I think it's a powerful perspective shift for anyone to realize that yeah, we all need to build a business, and I'm all for that, but there's other things. There's other
Yes.
things that really matter as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've made a business out of helping people to live their life with more purpose and live their highest priorities. I consider balance. When I wrote this book, Achieving
Mm.
Balance, I consider the concept of balance is when you're actually living your highest priorities in life, your brain, your spirit, it feels balanced. It feels like, I'm doing the things that I know I really want to be doing. And that gives such peace of mind. And, you're exactly right. Going out and helping. And so I gave a lot of service to mom. I get a lot of service to family. And, it eventually led God kind of pushing me to more education. You need to learn more, kid. I did a master's, I did a PhD, and I really wanted to study the brain, stress, emotions, relationships, health. And man, it is really hard to pull those things apart. They are all so much entwined, so much together that, now I feel like I kind of went into a cocoon in academia, came out and said, ha, I figured out how all these things are fitting together. Um, and now I'm able to help people not just with their money, but with their health, with their relationships, with their stress, with their time management, with their business, and put it together in such a way that I structure this to help them live their highest priorities so that they can have the time and freedom. Most business owners tell me there are three things that they want. They want more time, they want better finances, and they want more freedom. Like those are the three things
Mm.
that come down to like business owners in general. And, what does that mean? It means, well, they want more time to do the things that they want to do. And that's why they started a business to begin with.
Yeah.
But they get into what I call the workaholic trap if they're not careful. They justify long hours, they justify the hustle, they justify all of this until they become burnt out. And then they go, oh man, I'm kind of stuck now. And either they justify it further and it becomes a problem for their relationship. They divorce, they lose, relationship with kids. I've seen it. I've seen guys about to retire and they don't have any relationship with their kids anymore because they just worked. So having a dad, while he only lived 49, almost 50 years on this earth, who, in my opinion, had accomplished and become the person that I think he was supposed to be in that short amount of time, that really made me go, huh, I'm 25, I'm half his age,
Mm.
26 almost. What do I need to be doing? How can I make these big changes? And I think part of what I do now to coach business owners is to have that same kind of aha without having to go through that trauma.
Mm.
But really imagine, what does life look like at the end? And what if that's in 5 years, 10 years, tomorrow? Like, I'm not trying to create FOMO. I'm not trying to create fear-based motivation. But none of us really know. But if we can look from the back and look back on life and say, this is where I wanted to end up, well, then let's just start taking tiny little chunks of time and work on the things that we need to work on so that we can get there.
I think this is universal because You and I live on different sides of the planet. And yet, what you're describing in your experience with business owners is my experience in business owners. Maybe we use different words or we describe it slightly different, but the essence is the exact same. My experience is I know a lot of very successful business owners, and it's most of them went into the business to for freedom because they didn't want anyone being their boss. They wanted to be their own boss, and they reckoned they could make more money. So freedom and money. The guys I connect with, I observe that they have ticked the money box. I mean, most of them
Hmm.
have ticked the money box to a point that anyone looking at them going, "Wow," but
Yeah.
almost none of them tick the freedom box. And so they've made the money, but they've lost their time freedom. Um, I have a theory in this, and I wonder what you think about it. I think that to start a business, because this was my experience in the early years of starting a business, it requires a degree of hustle. I mean, in the big early years, it requires long hours often, it requires working very hard to get something off the ground. And I wonder if in those early years, business owners work so hard that they forget that that's the initiation process. It's not how you should do it forever. And by the time they have a successful business, um, they've forgotten maybe why they started it. And now they're on a treadmill and they go, if I stop running, it's going to
That's it.
stop.
That's it. It's fear.
It's fear.
Paul,
Yeah.
honestly, and I found this when I wrote my second book, Marry and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
The first book, Achieving Balance, was to talk about values, priorities, and now using your time as your most valuable asset. Time is your most valuable asset. Period. End of story. Exclamation point. You can compound your time. You can build it. You can get out of the business by creating structures, teams, systems, etc. But what most people forget to do is if they are in that hustle, which I quite honestly, I think from the get go, I think we're sold this wrong. We go to school, a lot of us, and we're like, well, we've got to work so hard just at school. And so we pour 80, 90 hours into study and, law school, dental school, medical school, like those, those professional schools, like they take so much from you that their divorce rates are really high. Why? Because they're not spending time with their spouse.
Mm.
They're finding other things to do without you and you're
Yeah.
not creating the connection. So, what happens is we get trained to be workaholics at school. Then we get into our profession and we're like, well, this is what I did to work hard at school. This is how I succeeded. And I'm so smart. So I'm going to just be super successful. And they dive right in with the justification. Well, this is for the family, right?
Yes.
I'm doing it for you. And don't get me wrong, they do love their family.
Of course.
They love their spouse, but they justify it. Well, I just need quality time. Well, in order to get quality time, you have to put in quantity time. You can't just say, all right, guys, quality time with dad. I have 2 minutes. Let's make a lifelong memory. Ready? Go.
Mm.
It just doesn't happen. It happens because you make the quantity and those quality moments show up. They do, but you can't force it. So this is where, the thinking is wrong. And then you're exactly right. Because they've been trained to do this from the get-go, when they can put on the brakes and step away, that fear that has driven them to get into the hustle is still there. And I actually found there's 3 types of individuals. I wrote this in my book, Marry and Grow Rich. I did research with over 2,000 couples that were business owners. I call them couplepreneurs. We're at over like 2,500 now. But at that time, when I released the book, we had about 2,000 to compare. There were 3 main types. The first type was, balance is so important to me, I'm actually not going to grow my business because I'm afraid that I will lose my freedom.
Mm.
Now, in the business world, if you're not growing, you're moving backwards. There,
Yeah.
you
There's no
have
standing
to
still.
grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just standing still, like they're going up on a down escalator,
Mm.
and it is a problem. But the fear is so real. Why? Because usually they've probably had an experience where they've lost their balance. And so they think that this is the solution. It's not. It's just a slow decay. Step two, and it may be a fast decay depending on your
Mm,
business
yeah.
model. Step or level or type two, excuse me. Type two is they they just believe hustle is the way. They have to grind it out. 5 years, 10 years down the road, they'll reestablish connection with their family. They'll get back in health. They'll go to church again. Like all these things, right? The problem there is like we've just been talking about is if you're in that habit, if that's your mindset, it is almost impossible to get out because now you've created a life that depends on all these variables. Type 3 that I found was like, hey, listen, the more you get out of your own way in the business, the more that you personally are not involved in all of the details, the more time freedom you have. And the more time freedom you have, the more balance and freedom that you honestly can enjoy. And because now you're going on vacations with your family, you're enjoying time at ball games, you're able to coach them, you're able to spend time alone with your wife and go on vacations and dates and do all the things. You have great relationships. Oh, and you go to church and you study scriptures and you have communion with God. Great. The things that actually matter the most to you and your health and all those, you have time to do that. Now you never actually want to go back to the hustle.
Yeah.
It creates a whole new dynamic. You're like, I never want to go back to that lifestyle. That's sickening. That's crazy. But I can tell you right now, Paul, my dad did a really good job of trying to be there for his family. He just wasn't able to get out of the business. So I think he was just in the stress of the business all the time. I don't make this about my dad, but as
Yeah.
an example. And many, many, many other business owners I've seen, thousands of them, they have the desire to be there. They just don't put in the systems and the processes to get them to be business owner. I mean, look at Elon Musk. I don't really care about the political side of all this. I'm not getting into that. But as a business owner, yeah, he sold PayPal. He took his millions, started Tesla. Now he's got, X and XAI now and the boring company SpaceX. He doesn't build any of the fuselage that goes into the spacecraft. He's not jumping in there on his own. He's not boring the holes for his cars to drive on. He's not building Teslas. Maybe he did at one point, but he's not doing any of that anymore. He's business stacking. And this is where, like, when you get out of the business and you have more time, you could say, gee, now I can take my asset that is the business and we can put money towards owning another company, owning this company, owning that company. And now you business stack and you become just unstoppable because now you own a whole industry. So this is the point I'm trying to get to is that, yes, if we're not careful, we can create a real desire to follow that fear of not having, growth, but we can also follow that desire of, I'm afraid I'll never grow my business, so I'm not gonna ever have balance. And I'm telling you, you can have your cake and eat it too.
So you've interviewed 2,500 couples, and you've come up with these three types. I'm in business 40 years. I've worked with a lot of business owners, and I recognize all three 100%. My question to you is what percentage approximately drop? Because I'm going to give you my experience, and I haven't interviewed 2,500 people.
Yeah.
Most people I know are stuck in group two. They're stuck in the
Yes.
hustle. Even if they have business tens of millions, they are
Yes.
stuck in two. If they listen to this podcast and hear Travis Parry talking about a tree, they'll go, wonderful. But then they
Good
will
for you.
give
Yeah.
the list of reasons why that's not
Yep.
possible for me. So, and that may be, I mean, you said earlier, it's fear. And I thought you really
Yes.
have struck at the core of this, because when you're holding on tightly to your business and you have this belief, it's only me, no one else can do it. Fundamentally, if you were to dig beneath that, it would be, I am afraid, I'm fear. So the question, I'm rambling. The question is, how
No, you're
many
good.
how many people do you see that actually manage
Yeah.
that transition?
So, when I interviewed 2,500 people, I found, various, percentages, but you're right. That type two showed up probably the most. Now, I'm a big, the type of research that I do is what did somebody do right?
Yeah.
Let's model that. I do qualitative research, not necessarily here's a bunch of survey questions. And
Mm.
have I done that? Yeah, I have. And I use it in the book. But most of what I do is to examine what are the good practices and how do we model. And so I'll always have plenty of work because there's type twos out there.
They're
And
well
if you're listening
spoken.
to this podcast, yeah, yeah. And so here's what I do. Let me explain how I help them, because this is not a conscious fear, Paul.
Yeah.
They do not fear what's going on, of growing their business. They are consciously afraid of, oh, gee, the economy's going horrible. We got war coming. We've got this happening, and the dollar's following, or whatever it is. Like, they have all these conscious fears, but subconsciously is where the problem is, because they've had some kind of traumatic experiences growing up. Usually for men, it's in sports or with their parents. Okay. And the well-meaning parents, well-meaning coaches, but have put them down, shamed them, blamed them for something that has now created a subconscious series of thoughts that get them stuck in two areas: either fear of success, meaning, oh, if I become successful, I might have some other problems and I don't want to deal with that.
Mm.
and or the most common is fear of failure. If I try to have something, I might lose it. In this case, gee, well, what happens if I have systems and people in place and I become really successful? What am I going to do with my time?
Mm.
I'll have more taxes to pay or whatever.
Yeah.
If they have fear of failure, they might think, well, if I try to have balance and I leave on vacation, my systems, my processes, my people might lose clients for me. And so I'll come back without a growing, striving business. That's actually a really, really big one that I hear all the time. And I hear, well, I'm the best at this, so I'm the only one, and blah, blah, blah. It's ego, but it's really coming from fear. So what I do is I actually help these business owners who are in type 2 to identify their subconscious fear. I just help them figure it out.
Mm.
Okay. Once they figure it out, they can go, oh, oh, that's where that came from. And then they can see actually how that fear has not just affected their business, but it's affected their relationship. It's affected their health. It's affected the community they live in. It's affected their financial decisions, like all of these things, because it's subconscious. It doesn't delineate between what thing you're doing. Oh, you're just in business mode. I'm going to give you these fears. No, the subconscious is trying to protect you at all times. It's designed to keep you alive. So if you put in a false belief system, it's there. Here's the great news. I've studied psychology for decades. The great news is that's a learned behavior. Those are learned fears. And that means that it can be unlearned. And if it can be unlearned, we can retrain the brain. We can help it. I do mind mapping. We look at where it comes from. And if we can find out where it's coming from, then we can actually retrain the brain to get rid of it completely. And that will allow business owners to say, okay, no, I don't actually want to be in type 2. I want to be type 3. I want to have it all. I want to have time and freedom and money, because they know in their heart, they know why they're doing it, but they'll still work 70, 80 hours with the justification because of that fear. So we can get them past that. That's step 1. Step 2 is really getting on that same page now with their spouse. If they can be on the same page with their spouse, they can achieve all their financial goals together without burning out. Some business owners actually overwork because their spouse is an overspender. That is a total thing. And they're afraid, oh my gosh, my wife's just going to spend everything. So I have to put in long hours. I have to do overtime. I've got to get those bonuses. I've got to increase the income because the spending, right? That's an issue. But once spouses are on the same page and they're supporting each other financially and they know where you're at, et cetera, that stress can be alleviated because you have a plan. But most couples, they're just not there.
You spend a long time talking about just there the psychology of this and getting into what's really driving you, because I think that in many cases people hear, well, so I know a lot of people who fall into the type 2. I'm going to say all of them, when they hear type 3, they go, yeah, I
Yes.
want that. And
Yeah.
they want it. The question is, why can't they get it? And then they lean to, well, I need to put the tools, the systems and processes in place. And it's still not working for them. And they go, well, I've tried that, but I tried it. It still doesn't work. And that's, they're putting the cart before the horse, because
Yes.
I mean, I really like what you're saying there, because if you have a fundamental belief system, and you know, we're mostly we're unaware of our belief systems. What I mean, had things shown to me, and I go, oh, now that makes sense. And often it's just looking at the realization, well, that's why I do that, and then you can begin to rewire your brain. Um, but I think if they don't fix that psychology part, and they jump, because what most coaches do is they go, here's my systems, and
Yeah.
you're not addressing,
No.
the fundamental engine that's driving this
Yep.
machine. And if you
That's
don't
right.
address that engine, then you don't get into the right mindset. Once they're in the right mindset, and yeah, absolutely, isn't it great? Get your spouse on board, because if you don't do that, then you're pulling against each other.
That's
Um,
right.
so I'm going to guess that once you've done that, then you still need the tools to change your business. Um, but your success rate must be much higher, because now
It
they understand.
It's ginormous, ginormous. And I used to actually do, here's the time management system that will, this is the bolts, this is the nuts, this is all the
Mm.
system. Like you can do this. I teach it in, a seminar. We'd follow up with some training. 90 days later, I'd come back and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And it's like, well, I fell off the wagon. I'm like, what, how? Like, I give you the system. You have it. Like, I trained you. You're following this, right? Like, I was, but then
Yeah.
I don't know. I just gave up. And Paul, that's actually what drove me to do a master's in psychology. I'm like, I started to see it. They were afraid, and I didn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
So I've literally spent, a decade and a half studying psychology and getting super deep into the subconscious, into reprogramming, to mind mapping, and it's incredible. The men who are strong enough to get deep inside their brain, they will see what I can see. I can show them exactly what's going on with their brain. And then they can go, oh, that's exactly what I've been struggling with. And they recognize it every single time. And then they can now say, all right, that's just a thought process. Now I can teach them how to get past it. And once they get past it, other fears will show up. Like other things will surface, but now they have a system to handle that.
Mhm.
What I've also seen now that I do coaching really for 6 months to a year, because what happens is most people is like, okay, I want the system. So they kind of absorb it. They listen to it, but they don't actually practice it. And I'm sure you've seen this too as a coach. They don't actually practice it really until they're like, do I actually believe what Travis, Dr. Parry's teaching me? So they kind of absorb the material. And then about 3 months in, I find them actually starting to try it.
Mhm.
They're like, okay, I'm actually going to do it because I know now that I believe it and it probably works. So then they go back and then they try to fix the system. Well, about 6 months in, now I can see them and I see their patterns and I see how they've tried to improve. And sometimes they're just stuck on a certain spot over and over and over again. That's when I will actually go in and we will remap their brain again and go, okay, what are you dealing with now? What's the next fear? What's the next level
Mhm.
down that you're struggling with? And then I can help them get past that and then they keep moving. So it's not enough. Like, quite honestly, I love my books are great. I have to say, like, I
Yeah,
wrote them. I
if
mean,
you don't like them, nobody will.
they're worth buying. But here's the thing. Like you can take a system and you can try to input it, but if you don't know what you don't know and you can't see how you're failing on certain areas and aspects, you're not going to actually be really good at it. It's like a guy who tries to golf by himself. Yeah, great. Go learn the sport. Have at it. But then, after a while, they realize I'm actually not very good at this and I should get some help. We're all at different levels, and I'm not saying you have to get that help from me, but I love doing this because I have found so much joy in helping other business owner dads to get rid of the stress in their life, have better relationships with their spouse who they want to have loving, intimate relationship with,
Mm.
have better family relationships because now they have more time. I do daddy dates every week. I take my kids on vacations. I'm going to Costa Rica with them. I do all these things not because they're lavish and like we buy the most expensive thing. Heck no. Like we have 8 children. We've learned to be really budget conscious on
You
this
have
because
to.
it takes a lot of money. All right. It takes a lot of money to do this. But it's the time. You can't buy back that time. It's gone. And the realization when my dad passed away, that moment, it'll never go away. Like I will always think of who knows when my time is.
Mm.
And if that's not motivation enough for you to at least look into what Achieving Balance book has and what Marry and Grow Rich, which is my newest book, Marry and Grow Rich. You can get that at marryandgrowrichbook.com or travisperry.com, or Amazon Audible, wherever you get your books. But if you don't even like want to learn about the subconscious, where am I at? Let alone how do you get on the same page with your wife? And then the third step is once you're on the same team with her and you've got your limiting blocks and beliefs really figured out, well, now you can start stepping out of the business. You get off the field is what I call it. A lot of us business owners, we're running around, we're playing offense and defense on our team. And I look at a soccer field because I play soccer and it's popular or whatever. I don't care what sport it is. If you're running around and you're the guy playing all the positions, you're going to burn out. Like it's just a matter of time. So my first thing is figure out what you're best at and delete, delegate, get rid of everything else, give it to a team member, AI, whatever. Delegate that out. Then figure out how can I actually get off the field completely? How can I be the coach? Hire somebody to take your spot. So then what do you do during that time? Well, you coach your team, but you also become a thought leader. You do podcasts, you speak, you write books. You now take your business to another level because you're the face of the company. Eventually, if you want to, you can hire somebody to do that for you and you can just own the company on paper and now it's an asset.
Yep.
And now you can do all those other, business stacking things we talked about because now the asset produces income without you doing a thing. And you got to get past your limiting beliefs. You got to get your spouse on board and you on board together. And then you can get off the field and really that's how you get to level 3. That's how you scale and keep your balance with your family.
I can relate to and validate. We've never had a conversation before this, but I can validate so much of what you're saying because I was in that type 2 for so many years until I hit a personal wall and crashed. And then that was 20 years ago. And then over the following 20 years, I slowly learned all of these things. I moved into that type 3, and now I have other people who run my business. And it's interesting when I talk to people that everyone wants to know what's the tools for having someone else run your business, and I go, won't have that conversation with you unless you have the first conversation, unless you have the conversation what's good, because if you don't understand what's going on inside, it's pointless. I thought as I signed on to this podcast that I was going to have a conversation with a financial planner. And that's what I thought. I'm having a conversation with a financial planner.
He was.
And,
Exactly. And
I
here's the
realized I'm
thing,
having a
Paul.
conversation with a psychologist, but
Well, and I will tell you this. I actually call myself like, what are you? And my kids have no idea. My wife has no idea like how to tell other people what I do.
yeah.
And I just say, now I call myself a family phenologist.
Wow.
'Cause if you're a phenologist, you're a financial psychologist, really. But I have a family background, a PhD in family, a master's in psychology, all these years of experience helping people with money. But what I found is all these things, they work together.
Yeah.
And, great financial planners, they're out there. That's awesome. And they're comprehensive in their own sphere. But what a lot of times they neglect to do is to connect aspects of your life back to your money. Business is huge. If we're business owners, that is our number one asset. Time, though, is our greatest asset, as far as personally. But on paper, our business is typically our number one. Maybe our home or real estate is 2 or 3 or whatever. But what I've found is that when we connect these pieces, they're much more likely to achieve their financial goals than if they just work on the finances alone. And that's quite honestly why I've decided to move this direction and put this all together. Like, how can I mentor people? How can they have a lasting family legacy? Not just money for retirement, What are they doing during the time that they're working years? How are they creating a legacy? Because quite honestly, the reason why I love my dad is because he spent time with me.
Yeah.
He taught me lessons. He chastened me when I needed it.
Mhm.
He taught me principles of hard work, diligence, compassion, humility. He didn't just lip service, he did it. And because I saw him, I will be forever changed. If I didn't have any relationship with him, I spent no time with him, and all I saw him was once in a while at home late at night because he's had a hard, long day, and maybe he was there at a ball game once in a while, I wouldn't have this conversation with you right now. It would not be as meaningful. But because my father gave that example and really showed the way, I know it's possible. And I know that other dads want that, and they want that legacy. Not just a financial legacy to give to the next generation, but they want a legacy of giving values and principles that will help their family be successful.
I absolutely love it. It's yeah, it resonates so deep. It resonates so deeply with me. But as it happens, over the past 6 months, I've spoken to a number of financial planners, and they all had financial conversations, and no one tried to understand me, my needs, and I'm going to say I don't need it because I do a lot of personal work, but I still think that if you do, how can you advise someone financially if you don't understand the whole picture? So,
Gotta know
I've
it.
interviewed a lot of people. Your approach to me seems very unique, very unique, and I'm delighted that that you can click on so many podcasts and have conversations about how two and two makes four. That you can have that. Bringing the psychology into that, I think, is what makes it powerful. And
Thanks, Paul.
so it's been. We're going to finish it here because I want to respect your time. But it's been a great conversation. Great conversation, Parry, Travis,
Oh, you're
Doctor
good.
Travis
You're good.
Parry. What I will do is I will stick links to your website and
Yeah.
to your books in the show notes. And I would really encourage people. I hope they've really enjoyed this episode. I think there's been a massive amount of wisdom for anyone who's stuck with us. A massive amount of wisdom. I hope they can take from it. So I would encourage people to reach out to you and to follow the work you do, buy your books, and we'll
Thank you.
put all those links in there. So, Dr.
Yeah.
Travis Parry, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks for humbling. That was a humbling experience for you to really kind of conclude that up, all the things you learned. Because man, I'm so passionate about this. I just want to get the word out, but to have somebody who has seen this happen and so much in your life and to be able to recognize that means a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, and the only problem I have with you, Doctor, is where the hell were you 20 years ago? Yes, I'm-
Uh,
that's my only issue. That's the only issue. 20
yeah,
years
all
too late.
right. I'm with you. I'm with you. I hear that all the time. Thank
Exactly.
you, sir.
It's
Appreciate
been
it.
a pleasure. Thank you.